ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
Hello, I'm Richard Fidler. For this special episode, we've gathered a collection of stories of wild adventure. They're tales from all around the world, shared by guests on the program across the past 20 years. First up is wildlife photographer Palani Mohan. Some years ago, Palani spent time with people who inhabit a small pocket of land high in the mountains of Mongolia. It's a place he calls the edge of the world. Palani went there over a number of years to observe the last of the true eagle hunters.
The people who practice this, they're called Mongolian Kazakhs. Does that mean they're a little different from the rest of the Mongolian population?
Well, the Kazakhs are very different to the Mongols. They look different. They pray to different gods. They have different poetry, different songs. The Mongolian Kazakhs are Sunni Muslims. The Mongols are Buddhist. So they're very different in many ways. And there's one thing that connects them together. That is, they're all herders. They're wanderers, and they don't like each other. To be very honest with you, people always, when I land in Ulaanbaatar, they always used to tell me, "Why are you going there? It's cold. It's windy. There's no hotels. There's nothing out there. Why do you keep coming back? What's the matter with you?"
Right, we've got a Hilton just here, which you could stay in and be perfectly comfortable.
Funny enough, the Ulaanbaatar does have a Hilton.
What have you seen of the connection between man and bird in this place?
Well, that to me was the most important thing. I met this incredible man called Ozar Khan. I met him on my first trip. He's 94 years old. He's tall. He's handsome. He's got broad shoulders. He's got hands like sandpaper. He's blind in one eye, deaf in the other one. And he told me a lot of things about, not only about eagles, about what's happening to the young and what's happening to the environment and how it's changing. So I found out the real meaning of the connection between man and bird through him.
What can you say about that?
Well, to explain that, maybe I should talk about how these men get the eagle in the first place.
Yeah.
So when they're about 3 to 5 months old, they climb up into a top of a mountain, into a rock. There are no trees, so the golden eagles don't nest in trees. So they nest inside of a rock. And they take the chick, the eaglet, I should say, eaglet from the mother. Generally, they take it when they think it could live away from its mother, but not young enough, it hasn't tasted a kill or seen the mother kill or tasted fresh meat. So they bring it home, they hand feed it, and they fall in love with it. The reason why I say love is because it's the word that comes over and over again. They talk about love and dreams and the bond. So when they feed it, the bird loves you and you love it back. And then you take it out a couple of years later onto a hunt and release the bird. And the question I always ask is that it's a beautiful wild bird. When you release it, why doesn't it just fly off? Why does it come back to you? And he says, because it loves us. It loves us.
You said dreams as well. What role do dreams play in this?
Well, the Kazakh hunters talk about dreams all the time. They always say, I've just dreamt about my bird. I had a dream about my bird, the last one I released last night. There's one guy, I lived with him for a while, and he was saying that just the night before he had a dream about the last bird he released. And his wife was about 5 feet away from him, and she was chopping some ice, and she turns around and says, he dreams about the bird more than he dreams about me nowadays. For that, he reaches to me and he touches me on his shoulder and says, that'll happen to you too when you get older. You'll dream less about your wife. It's perfectly a normal thing. So yes, they truly love these birds. There's a strong connection between the bird and the hunter, and you can see that. You can see the vastness on the bird's face, and you can see the bird's features on the hunter's face.
So it's like a proper. I think the old medieval term for it is a familiar. It's an animal that it's not a pet. It's something else there.
They do so many things similar. For example, they listen to the wind similarly, and that's a saying that comes up. And what I mean by that is that the birds spend so much time flying high, sitting on top of a mountain, alone, and the hunters do exactly the same. They listen to the wind. When I was talking to one of these hunters, I recall I asked him, what do you do up there? You said you spent 2 days up there by yourself. Do you get bored? Is it cold? Do you sing songs? And he says, I listen to the wind. I said, oh, that's a strange thing to say. And the next morning, we went off looking for eagles. And we're on top of a mountain range, if you can picture a mountain, and it was my translator, myself, and a father and a son. And something happened. Some of the yaks had disappeared overnight. I'm not entirely sure. And they just took off. And then my translator and myself were stuck there on top of a mountain. So we hit next to this rock. And for about, maybe 5 hours. And I listened to the wind. And what I mean by that is that the sounds of the wind bouncing off the rocks and the ground, and the earth and the grass, sometimes it's really loud, sometimes it's tiny little noise, and sometimes it's deafening. And it was beautiful. And I live in Hong Kong, where there's a lot of people and a lot of madness that takes place. And as I sat there for about 5 hours, I would have to say that's got to be one of the most memorable things that has happened to my life, is that time. And I totally got what he meant when he said listening to the wind.
How big is this bird, by and large?
Oh, look, there are 8 kilos. There are 8 feet when the eagle opens its wing. There are massive, massive birds. They live up to 20 years. So when you first see eagle, when it's actually sitting down, it doesn't look that big. But once it opens up its wings, it's something else. It's a magnificent creature.
Are they solitary creatures, or do they bond with their mates?
They bond with one eagle.
They're monogamous?
Yes, and the hunters only use the female to hunt because it's more aggressive, it's bigger, and the males are good for one thing, as one of them told me.
Why do the hunts happen in winter rather than in the warmer months?
For a number of reasons. One, because it's traditional. That's it's happened for thousands of years. And two, that's when the hunters, in the old days anyway, needed the fox fur and the wolf fur. And also in winter, when there is a thick snow cover, the footprints of the foxes can be clearly seen.
Oh, of course. They're easier to track.
Easier to track. There's no way the fox can go and hide under a rock and so forth.
How do the men prepare?
Well, it all happens very fast, and sometimes I would spend the night saying, "So, what, guys? What's happening tomorrow? Oh, nothing's going on." The next morning, everyone's rushing around. Horses are saddled up. They grab their jackets. They grab the eagle on horseback, and we take off. I can't ride a horse either, so I was taken on back of a horse, and so they go up on top of a ridge where they think a fox might be. Another hunter is below scaring the fox. And once the fox is out in the open, you could look down and it's a tiny speck on a white snow-covered. You can see the footprints of a fox running off. So the man with his eagle stands there. The man takes the hood off the eagle. It's cold, it's windy, it's quiet, but the wind is deafening. And the eagle first sights eyes on its prey down below. And it just sits there patiently waiting. The fox is running, and you're kind of thinking, come on, bird, this is it. You've got to get down there. And when it's ready, when the gusts are ready, when it feels like, it lifts his wing, and just this big poof with his wing, and it shoots down like a rocket. And it almost disappears because it's so far down. And within seconds, it lands on the fox. And sometimes 2 birds can take a blue wolf. Now, I've never seen that, but I've heard it enough times for me to believe it. So the bird comes down, grabs the fox.
Where does it attack the fox?
Around the neck.
And does it just hook into it, or does it grab it, or does it cut the jugular?
It grabs the jugular, and apparently it goes for the eyes first, like most birds do. In the meantime, the other hunter, normally the son, the apprentice, would ride up and finish the fox off. And the liver, the part of the liver, the tastiest bit about a bit of fox, was given to the bird. And sometimes the birds don't make it. Sometimes the birds die. Now, a fox will fight for its life, and I've seen that happen. They are ferocious animals.
What does that look like, to see a fox fighting an eagle for its life?
Well, a lot of the times, a fox would run away from the eagle, and the eagle would, if it escapes the first claw, it runs away, and the eagle will fly in and would try and attack it again, and the fox will try and bite it back. So this goes on for some time.
And what, there's like flapping wings and
snow,
feathers?
But a lot of the times when you're up on top of the mountains, it's very difficult to see because it's so far down below. And that was one of my difficulties, photographing the actual kill. I've got a couple of pictures that it's very difficult to be in the right place at the right time because you don't know which direction the fox is going to run. So a lot of the times from high up, you can just see a lot of snow, a lot of yelling, a lot of screaming going on by the dad who's up there. And it's up to the son to go in there now and separate the bird and the animal and kill the animal.
And how does he kill the animal?
He gets a knife and
cuts his throat. So it just ends it as quick as he possibly can.
And the liver comes out, and a piece of liver is given to the bird. The fox is put back in the back of the horse, tied up, and they come home and they skin the fox. They eat the meat. So I think they like the birds more than the fox, these hunters.
Fair enough. When you see something like that, though, what does it do to you to see that kind of, as a city guy, seeing that ritual of a blood kill like that to you? Does that shock you? And how do you feel watching that?
Well, and it doesn't shock me because I just think the reason why I think is because it's not that gruesome. It's a bird and a fox, and it's a bit of blood. There's lots of flapping of wings and a bit of snow, but there isn't. It's not carnage, and also this has been happening for 1,000 years. So it doesn't. I'm not saddened by it. I'm fascinated by it, and I'm 6 foot. I become 4 foot. I become a smaller person when I see this.
What do you mean?
Well, because I just think there's so much more to life. These people live such a different life, and I'm learning stuff from them. I'm learning about not talking and not asking too many questions and just being quiet and all those things. So in that way, it affects me.
You're also an artist, as being a photographer, and the artist always has that sneaking naughty thought, which is that, all this blood and horror, it's so beautiful. I want to capture it.
Yeah. Well, I did take some images of blood on snow, which is actually quite beautiful. I mean, it creates a lot of shapes, but I was never really fascinated by the actual kill. There was so much happening around it that was that affected me more.
And that moment when the eagle takes off, the hood comes off, it's this kind of, I don't know, static power. I'm guessing it has all this static power. It's inert or something, and then suddenly, it comes into life.
Well, I'll give you an example. There was a situation where, if you can imagine a rock face right on top of a mountain, the man is standing there. At this stage, I know what is happening, so I'm prepared to get in the right position. So he's standing on top of a rock face, and his eagle in his hands, and I'm lying underneath the eagle because I wanted to get a picture of the eagle going over my head. And the hood's lifted, the eagle takes off, and the first poof I told you about, the wings, and it was so strong. But my second camera body, which was on my left shoulders, was thrown off and it went tumbling down the cliff. And I was thrown off, all 82 kilos of worth was thrown off the back. That gives you an idea of how powerful the wind gust is when the eagle flaps his wings, or it's an incredibly powerful moment. It only needs one of those to go all the way down.
Hi, Sarah Kanowski here. Our next adventurer is the intrepid Bonnie Hancock. Bonnie found a book in her local library that inspired her to paddle a surf ski around Australia. To complete that epic journey as fast as possible, in the end it took almost a year, Bonnie paddled some sections of it point to point, and one of those was across the Great Australian Bight. What did people experienced with that stretch of ocean think about your plan?
They thought I was crazy. Probably over 50 times leading in, I was told by skippers and these super yacht captains I was speaking to and marine pilots that that's crazy. You don't go east to west across the Bight. We all know that most of the time the currents and the wind is running west to east. But I'd spoken to Sir Roger Batten and he said, you'll get a weather window. You might have to wait a few days for it, maybe even a week, but you'll get that weather window across the Bight. And we did. We waited 2 days at a place ominously called Coffin Bay, which was the last point of mainland contact in South Australia before we did the Bight crossing. And the place just before Coffin Bay was Misery Bay. So someone had named this apparently after they'd crossed the Bight. That's where we started from. And I was facing a 1,200 kilometre crossing on a ski. It had actually never been done in history. So there was no blueprint. We actually didn't know if it physically could be done.
Once you had a weather window and the catamaran dropped you and your surf ski out 500 kilometres or so from the shore, what was it like?
It was so quiet. It's just quiet out there. And I remember I would often take my headphones off and just listen. And you realise the pace of life that far out to sea is so slow. And, you know, when I came back, it took me a few months to get used to the pace of life on land again. All there was out there for that 2 weeks was albatross birds and mutton birds. And what I thought was fascinating is that the mutton birds return to shore every evening. They fly at 80 kilometres an hour to do that. The albatross float on the wind for months at a time. And I had these situations where the albatross were very interested in me because they'd obviously seen no crazy person on a ski out there, and they would come within touching distance. And I remember reaching out and touching an albatross that put its wing out, sitting on the water, and just crazy stuff like that. But other than that, it's just the wind and the swells. So a squawk of a bird gives you a big fright.
What was it like paddling when the wind was behind you down there in the Southern Ocean?
It's what every ski paddler trains their whole life for, those conditions. It's amazing. It's incredible. You feel strong and powerful and just the utmost sense of freedom as well. I remember leaning back as I reached a top speed of 28k an hour without even paddling, cruising for 500 metres without putting my paddle in the water, and just letting Mother Nature do the work and just feeling completely free, and in a way that I hadn't since I was a child. And, you know, the water is freezing out there. Again, it's under 10 degrees. The only thing that kept me warm was a thick steam wetsuit, which had a hood, it had booties, it had gloves. So I'm completely covered head to toe. I've got fluoro gear on to keep me safe, make sure my crew can see me. But at night time, that feeling of freedom becomes fear because you don't want the big wind and the swells when it's pitch black dark. I basically was about halfway across the Bight, and it was at night time. There was actually no moon out that day. So as we know, the moon cycle, every now and then you get no moon. Incredibly dark. I can't see other than maybe half a metre either side of my ski. The wind was just absolutely pumping. It was over 25 knots. This is so strong. And I fell out of my ski. And as I said, the wind was really, really strong. My support boat couldn't stop that quickly. They had the sails up. So they sailed away from me. So I'm in the water. I was at the end of a 100-kilometre day. I'd held no food down for a week. And I'm trying to get in, and I can't get in my ski. I tried 6 times, and in that process, the ski flipped up and banged me in the head. So I've sunk back down into the water. I've then kind of lost sort of my ability to know kind of what direction I should even be going. That came back quickly. I tried to get back into my ski. I fell out again. I realised I wasn't getting into that ski.
Were you panicking?
I went into a really strange sense of calm, which was actually concerning because when I went into that sense of calm, a feeling of warmth started to overtake my body and my extremities. And I found out later that's actually the first signs of hypothermia. I didn't know it at the time. I basically put my arms over my ski and I just laid there. And I remember looking up at the sky and I saw the beautiful Southern Cross glittering in the sky. And I thought, how amazing, how beautiful is this? I had that feeling of gratitude. And then really quickly another thought happened. You're going to die. If you don't move, your boat's not coming back. You can't see them. You've actually got to keep moving forward. You've got to swim. And so slowly but surely I pushed that ski away from me and I started to move my arms and legs, just this tiny little dog paddle. And eventually I saw the lights of the boat coming back to me. So it's 12 minutes of submersion in the Bight until you're hypothermic. I ended up being in for 10. By the time I was pulled aboard the boat, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak. It took a long time to get my body temperature back up. and there's no help coming out there. You're days out of range of help. There's no helicopter coming. We were 500k out in the ocean, and this is waters known for killer whales and great white sharks. And I remember also looking down at my feet while I was there with that sense of calm and seeing a blue light. And later we think that I was concussed in seeing that because there was no blue light out there. So really scary stuff to happen in the middle of the ocean.
The sound you're hearing there is an Icelandic glacier. It was brought to us by field recordist Chris Watson. Chris travels to all sorts of wild places and captures the sound of them for film and TV, and sometimes purely for the pleasure of listening.
How did you actually record the sound of a glacier knocking like that?
It's recorded not with conventional microphones, but with something called a hydrophone, which is an underwater microphone. And I was working on it was actually a travel film project many years ago now, and we went up on snowmobiles to the summit of the Vatnajökull Glacier, and we stayed overnight in a mountain rescue hut at Kverkfell. So we were with some scientists. And the morning, it was in June, and it had snowed a little bit the night before. And I remember walking out with this glaciologist, this scientist, and he bent down and picked up some fresh snow and squeezed it in his hands and sort of crushed it into ice and dropped it. And he said, the ice that's forming today here will start a journey down the Vatnajökull Glacier. And he said, we're going down to where the glacier calves to the coast this afternoon. He said it might take us 90 minutes to drive down there. He said that piece of ice is going to make the same journey, but it's going to take 10,000 years.
That's amazing.
And there were crevasses, because it was summer, there were cracks in the glacier all around us, really. It wasn't dangerous, but there were small cracks. And it's mobile. It's a river of ice. It seems motionless and silent to us, but I dropped one of my hydrophones down the crevasse. So it's rather like a contact microphone. It only picks up sound with things that touch it. And so I lowered this hydrophone down and left it there for the couple of days that we were up there, and kept recording. And slowly I could get this sense of this fractional movement, a millimetre a day of this glacier. And that's what produces those cracking and groaning sounds. It's the fractional shift of the creaking of the glacier as it starts its journey.
I've been to that point where the glacier does carve off into the south coast and then into the North Atlantic. And you get a sense of the immensity of the glacier when you do that, but also a sense that the landscape is in this constant state of slow-moving disruption. Is that what you've captured here?
Yes, it's that movement. And in fact, I know Jökulsárlón, the other end where you've been. I was there last summer, actually, and what happens there, the great pieces of ice, after their 10,000-year journey, break off and carve into the Blue Lagoon, and then start to melt because they mix and merge with the brackish water that comes in from the sea. And so I then use my hydrophones in this sort of salty, brackish water with the icebergs in. And what I got was this delightful snap, crackle and pop of the ice melting from underneath. And another glaciologist who I was with said, the exciting thing that they've only recently discovered is when the ice melts, it releases air. And that air has been trapped for 10,000 years.
Broadcast, podcast. This is Conversations.
Something completely different now from veterinarian Campbell Costello. After vet school, Campbell signed up for an endurance horse race, one which has been described as 600 miles of beautiful hell.
Once you graduated as a vet,
It would have been perfectly natural for you to remain in country Queensland or maybe worked in a city vet or something like that. Instead, you went out into the world to some of the more unusual and interesting places of the world.
Yeah, a big catalyst for that, I was very fortunate to sign up and be accepted to ride the world's longest horse race, the Mongol Derby. The Mongol Derby.
Derby.
Yeah, I know. I can hear my British counterparts abroad going, it's pronounced Derby, sir. Like, I graduated from Townsville, born, raised, educated here. I went into state for a while. But yeah, that was sort of the first thing that really pushed me. I remember being mid-20s. There was 34 riders at the start of the race, and I was one of 16 that finished. So the attrition was over 50%. To do such an adventure, experience such an amazing thing, to finish it at a young age, for confidence and personal growth, yeah, it really planted the seed, and I had a thirst for more adventure and exploring and sort of to grow my perspective and my thoughts and my brain. Yeah,
like I said, it's described as 600 miles of beautiful hell. What's the course you go on?
Well, it is structured to a certain extent. You are given a checkpoints you'd have to ride to. It's a recreation of Genghis Khan's old messaging route. So
the old postal system of the Mongols, the Mongol Empire.
Yeah, exactly right. Obviously asking a horse to quickly carry a message over 1,000 kilometres is impossible. They'd break down from exhaustion. So what they used to do was place these stations, 30 kilometres apart and gallop the horse point to point. So every 30 kilometres, fresh horse, and you could cover a lot of country in a day to send messages and letters and postal stuff.
Yeah, Mongol horse warriors would take 3 horses for each warrior so they could alternate several times during the course of a day so they wouldn't exhaust their ponies. And is that what you do when you ride in the Mongol Derby?
Well, not 3 horses at once, but at each checkpoint you've got to vet your horse in, and obviously it has to be sound, so no signs of lameness, no saddle rubs, no wounds. The heart rate needs to be below a certain rate. That is very, very strict. It's something that after being not only a rider but a veterinarian for it with several years is, the welfare parameters are pretty strict. So once you've passed that, you get a new horse and you keep on riding. So yes, there is some kind of, bricks and mortar as far as the route goes, but it is a bit ad hoc when you're like, well, do I go left of the mountain or right of the mountain? And those choices can either win you a race or bring you, great demise and challenge. And, weather, there's just so many things and so many variables that can really make or break it.
Now, I've never been out to that part of the world, but I've seen a lot of footage of it. And what it reminds me of is central Queensland in terms of its extreme flatness, the way the land seems to go on forever on the Eurasian steppe. And you see these scudding clouds that just go on and on and on forever until they sort of meet the flat horizon. Is that what you saw out there? Did it in some ways remind you of home?
Yeah, I sometimes see some great similarities there. You've got the undulating steppe, as you call it. There's no timber, little hills and mountains, not massive topography until you get into the northern parts. It gets some pretty big mountains there and forests. But yeah, it can remind you of central Queensland and that Channel country. From what I've seen as a rider and as a vet, the Australians do really well. We're sort of synonymous and understand and respect that isolation. We'll get a lot of seasoned horsemen and women that go out to Mongolia, but they get on the horse and kick it on and they soon realise, there's no fences, there's not a sand arena, there's not a little day spa at the end of a good ride, that one must go and get a massage. Like it is, you will not bathe for several days. You will eat Mongolian food. You go to the bathroom in a trench toilet and yet you're left to your devices. And I found that the Australians, especially the bushies, they tend to do really well on this race.
Well, the classic Mongol horsemen also drank fermented mare's milk to keep them going and horse blood when their provisions ran low. I'm sure you must have had a good crack at those things too, Campbell.
I haven't done the blood pancake,
right.
But you're right. They used to nick the jugular vein and get blood out of their horse to remain strong.
Yeah, only if they absolutely had to. That was the thing, yeah.
Correct, yeah.
But they drank fermented mare's milk all the time, which had a slight alcoholic buzz to it. Did you have a crack at that as well?
I have had many a crack at... so they pronounce it there erag.
Yeah.
When I was in Kazakhstan, another place, they call it kumus, but in Mongolia it's erag.
Is it like sort of alcoholic yogurt or something? That's what I'm imagining. Have I got that wrong?
No, 100%. It is.
Right.
It is alcoholic, and it's funny. Different provinces, it's almost like wine. The Mongolians go, you can taste that it's different here, and the pastures and the sweetness. But it's sort of like someone left milk out at room temperature.
Yeah.
It's very tarty, it's vinegarish, but yeah, it's a great diuretic. It will get you drunk. They call it their summer purge, their clean out stuff as well. So I always warn people that have never developed a gastrointestinal tolerance for it to be very careful. But look, I might go ahead as the vet and be like, hey, we need to get these horses on the line, yada, yada. And they're like, we must drink horse milk to see if you're, manly enough to do it. And you sort of slam down a couple of bowls of this stuff and sort of grit your teeth together to filter out a bit of the hair and the curd. And, it's, you're like, holy shit, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. I've got a bit of a buzz on. And I'm about to practice veterinary science. And they're like giving you thumbs up going, this fella's great. Yep, no worries. You are worthy of our ponies now.
And you were, sir. And you were indeed. That's impressive. I'm impressed. I am. I think that's tremendous. So once you've had your couple of bowls of herag and you've climbed on top of the pony and you're charging across this extraordinary horizon, what are you thinking? How does it feel? Is it great? Or does it get a bit old pretty quickly?
Oh, it's just such a myriad of emotion, like you can be euphoric and feel and just like, wow, look at this, skyline and the countryside and just taking it all in. And then 5 minutes later, you're bawling your eyes out because you're so exhausted and you're chafed and your knees are absolutely killing you.
Are you serious? It does bring you to tears, your frustration?
Oh, it is such a undulating feeling of emotion, and that's why I enjoy it. You strip everyone down. Like we've had crown princes at Qatar ride right down to your soul to the earth, working class people, and it just. No one cares. It strips it all away and everyone's equal. Gravity still grabs us all at 9.8 newtons and slams us into the ground. It doesn't care about your breed nor where you're from. And I've seen, special forces, big burly men reduced to tears, just going, I'm tired, I've had gastro, I'm so sore and I miss my family and, they're jubilant and like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. This is the best cigarette I've ever smoked in my life. And then just be reduced to tears. It's amazing to see, and that's the game that you have to play. It's not for 1 day, 2 days. You've given 10 days to have to battle the psychological warfare to keep on going. And, I see it as a vet all the time, but as a rider, it's just something that, you're like, I want to give up. I don't want to ever look at another horse again. I think the best thing about it is it's very grounding. In Western culture, you're like, I've got that meeting. I've got that bill in a week. I've got my tax in a couple of months. In that moment, you're like, I just want to finish the next 35 kilometres and not get hurt. Yeah.
Right. So once you came towards the end of this 10-day experience, how are you feeling? What was that like?
Oh, it was overwhelming, to be like, I wasn't one of the casualties that had to pull out from serious injury.
Was it hard to finish the race?
It was, because it meant the end of you were sort of gunning to get there to go like, I just want to finish this thing and give my knees and my ankles a break and my butt and have a shower. But you're like, it's just such an extraordinary experience, it means the end. All good things must come to an end. So I remember I was riding with two gentlemen whom I've never met prior to the race. Ben, a gentleman from the United Kingdom, and Will, an American. And we sat on top of this massive ridge amongst all the pine forest, this beautiful northern cool area. It could have been in Colorado, big eagles sort of circling over the top of us. And there's a little pile of rocks and a monument called an ovu, which the Mongolians, you can make little sort of gifts to the gods at these places. And we're sitting there smoking a cigarette and we could see the flags of the finish line 5 to 6 kilometres away. And we sort of sat there for a while and just went, wow. This is it, gents. It's been an absolute pleasure riding with you. Sort of had just laughing uncontrollably, going, I remember that when we fell over in the river, or I hit that rabbit hole and I got javelin and head first in the ground. How did I not fracture one of my cervical vertebrae? I have no idea. And then kicked on and we formed a cavalry charge towards the end. And some Mongolian herders sort of saw us and joined in, and we charged towards the finish line. And it was, it's almost anticlimactic. I remember dismounting off this horse and just sitting there in silence. Yeah, all three of us just like, oh my God, what do I process first? You know, the jubilation or the disappointment or the pain. Like there was just so much going on.
Next, a story from writer Sally Henderson. Sally spent many years leading safari camps in parts of Africa. She also became an advocate for elephant conservation after one saved her from a lion. Here she explains why she moved from Zambia to Namibia on Africa's west coast.
Why there?
Well, there because I'd been in the past and fallen in love with the scenery, but I wanted to find two creatures. I needed to find the desert elephant, which I hadn't seen before, and I was pursuing brown hyenas. They've been my quest creature, if you like, forever. They're unusual. They look beautiful. They're different from spotted hyena. They're reclusive. They're shy. They're very highly endangered, so that appealed to me too. I love it that they have got a place on Earth where they're safe. And why they've got a place on Earth that they're safe in Namibia is because that desert is so arid and hostile and to humans. Animals at least have peace in that place.
Do you reckon hyenas get a bad rap from humans? I mean, they appear in The Lion King as these, sort of sneaky, bad creatures, led by I think voiced by Whoopi Goldberg, where they make a noise that's similar to laughter, and they're scavengers. But aren't we just projecting human traits onto them when we do that?
Most definitely. They actually hunt, and in some parts of Africa, lions scavenge from them. And they've got the most incredible social behaviour, and they love their young, and they've got these dens. I was so fascinated by them that when we went to run this camp, my husband and I went out one night when no one was there and sat in this gorge above a latrine, mound of hyena poo, because it was actually brown hyena poo, and I was determined to see them. They were all around and very shy and nocturnal, hadn't seen them. It was possibly a foolish thing to do, but Jer said to me, look, this is our only chance. I've seen them, everybody's seen them, but not you. And we know that they're going to come and visit that because they have a midden that they all go to defecate. So, at some stage during the night, a hyena will come there. And we sat there. We walked 700 paces through the dark because Jeremy had measured it out and sat there in the freezing cold. The desert is so icy at night.
Really? How cold?
Minus lots. The coldest I've been there is minus 11. And then during the day, of course, it's very hot. So we're sitting there freezing. And we also had, hearing strange drum beats from an archaeological site. It was a very unusual night in general. And we sat and nothing came. And then we heard a lion roar nearby. And we thought, well, we might just go back to the tents because this isn't very safe. That lion's out there and we can't see him, but he could get us. So we are just about to go, not having found the brown hyena, and a form slips through the gorge below us, past the latrine. And it stopped, and it was a leopard. The moon by now had come up, and it looked at us. And let me tell you, there is nothing more malevolent than the gaze of a leopard. They're beautiful, stunning creatures, but they're also capable of killing for fun. They're different from lions.
They will kill for fun, for sport.
They'll kill for sport. They'll go and kill a whole number of springbok babies, and they only want one, just because. They've got a different nature altogether. They're very cunning and sly. They're more like what you were describing hyenas as. They're also magnificent, of course.
So you're standing there and you're seeing this leopard in the moonlight.
Yeah, we're sitting there. We've got no weapon. We've got a long way to go for safety. And
what do you know about a leopard's killing method at that moment?
Well, I know that they'll come up onto your shoulder and grab you, put their mouth around your throat, and then they'll gut you with their rear legs. They just, rake. You've seen a cat raking at something, and they'll rake.
And will it attack from behind?
It'll try to get you from behind.
So first thing you'd know then, I suppose, if you were attacked is, I don't know, it's paws on your shoulders then.
Yes.
its head coming round to bite
That's
you in the
right, and then
jugular.
it'll turn around and start raking your stomach or with the back legs.
Will they attack and kill humans?
Oh, yes. Oh, often. So there he was, you see, and Jeremy and I actually sitting still. We hadn't got up yet with the sleeping bag around our shoulders. And we both knew what to do because we'd done it with a lion before. And that is to make yourself look like one great big monster. So we both stood up close together as if we were this big monster and we roared at it. So you got to roar, but you don't look it in the eye. Anyway.
Like what kind of roar? Like, rawr,
oh, yes, caveman stuff. Rawr, really, really shout at it. And it's either going to go away or it's going to just ignore you. It went away, it turned and went. So we began to walk backwards because if you turn your back on a leopard, that's not a good idea, or any predator really, as fast as we could without running, because the minute you run, you're prey to the predator. Walking backwards in the dark, back towards our tent, which is 700 big paces behind us. That's a long way. And he wasn't there, and we're nearly there, and suddenly he's there again, just walking towards us. And then he sat down like a dog. It was the most extraordinary thing, and began to lick himself as he's looking at us. This leopard didn't want to eat us. He was quite intrigued. And I think it was because humans don't go to this area. He hadn't had many connections with humans. He probably didn't know what we were. So we did survive, but we didn't find the brown hyena.
You just intrigued this leopard all night.
Yes.
It was really quite tricky to entice our next adventurer into the studio. And that's because, for much of the year, Andrew Harper is unreachable. He's most often out in the desert walking with his camels. When we did sit down together, Andrew shared stories that were wildly beautiful and unexpected, starting with his very first coast-to-coast camel walk.
I started on the west coast, on the beach.
On the beach.
On Warara Station, on Anzac Day. It was pretty bloody warm.
This is just you, and how many camels?
I had 3 camels and my dog. I didn't go too far that day, and I remember it was well over 35 degrees or so, and just the relief of getting going, it was extraordinary. And I didn't eat that night. I didn't even boil the billy. I just crawled into my swag. I was just so grateful to be on the road.
How quickly does the land change from the coast into that kind of beautiful ochre red desert?
I mean, I was going through some pretty rough, hilly country, trying to navigate through that, following rocky streams, down the sides of hills, hoping that the camels didn't have to jump off something too steep. Now, I'd never been there before, so it was pretty exciting, and it was a challenge to navigate. And it changes quickly from that coastal dune country into this, the rocky escarpments, and then quite suddenly you're out into cattle country and open mulga where it's much easier to walk. You can see where you're going and you're not restricted to following any station tracks.
And then when you reach the desert itself, why is it best to be on foot?
Well, you're connected to the landscape, totally. Walking, and especially with an animal, you are as close to the land as you could possibly be. It's a very natural way to experience everything that the landscape throws up at you because you're part of it. You're not travelling in it. You're not looking at it from above. You're actually just in it. And of course, you're with camels and you're with animals, so it's never boring. You're reading the landscape for the animals behind you. So you're reading, the best way to get up a dune or down a dune, which way to cut through that piece of scrub or where that good feed is over there. So you're not following a GPS or you're not really following a compass. And of course, that's without thinking about looking at the plants and animals and the land itself.
And as you're doing that and human contact fades away and you get into kind of the rhythm of the day, what happens to your mind as you get into that space?
It empties.
What do you mean empties?
You're in a different zone. You've completely left urban Australia behind and technology behind. Everything that happens in the day is completely up to you. Everything that happens in the other outside world is irrelevant. It's very peaceful. It's very quiet. And consequently, your brain relaxes, your body relaxes, even though you're working very hard physically. You tend to enter a space that's very comforting, I guess you could say. And, you don't walk along particularly thinking of anything. Most days I'd walk along thinking of nothing. And, nothing. There's nothing wrong with nothing at all. You just let your thoughts wander over the dunes to the horizon, which, of course, you never, ever reach. And at the end of the day, sometimes I'd hop in my swag and all the thoughts come, scampering back across the sand dunes with all these observations and things attached to them. And you get into your swag and it's as if you've just read a book for the entire day because your brain has been fed by the landscape, but you've actually not consciously thought of anything. So you feel enriched when you go to bed, and the next day you get up and you do it again.
Here again is master field recordist Chris Watson, this time in Africa.
Tell me how you captured a herd of elephants at rest.
It was a magical time. I was working on a project about the lives of animals at night in the Masai Mara. It's a bit like Australia. A lot of the animals are nocturnal because of the heat of the day. And we followed this herd of elephants through the day and then through the night. And it's the first time I've ever seen elephants go to sleep. I mean, we don't think, sometimes they stand up and rest. But this herd, sort of 2 a.m, this moonlit night in the Masai Mara, slowly, led by the matriarch, the sort of boss female of the herd, into this area of short grass because they were babies. And then slowly, one by one, they came past our vehicle. And we didn't have any lights on. We had night vision goggles, so we could see very clearly what was happening. And I was on the roof with a microphone on a pole. The camera was inside, and these animals came around us, and just a few meters in front of us, one by one, went onto the knees and then just rolled over and just went to sleep. It was the most magical experience. And then, instead of the powerful infrasonic rumbles that you normally associate with elephants and the trumpeting, was this incredible long-form rhythm, almost like waves on the beach, this of elephants breathing.
Podcast, broadcast, and online. You're listening to Conversations. Hear more conversations anytime on the ABC Listen app or go to abc.net.au/conversations.
You can search for Chris Watson's extraordinary recordings online, and you'll find links to the full interviews with all the featured guests in the show notes of this episode. This conversation was recorded on the lands of the Gadigal, Jagera and Turrbal peoples, thanks to story producers Michelle Ransom-Hughes, Pam O'Brien, Jenna Koda and Meggie Morris. Executive producer of Conversation's 20th anniversary collection is Carmel Rooney. I'm Richard Fidler. Thanks for listening.